So I would like to call our meeting to order. This is the January 6, 2021 Cemetery Committee meeting, the first meeting of 2021. The meeting is being video and audio recorded. And now I'm going to read the special language that I've been given to read. In accordance with Governor Baker's executive order permitting virtual meetings during the COVID pandemic, the Cemetery Committee is conducting this public meeting today, January 6, 2021, Eastern Time, on the Zoom platform in accordance with the town's policy directive and guidance issued on April 1, 2020, amended May 7. The meeting has been properly noticed with the town clerk. I ask that all Cemetery Committee members, town staff, and presenters activate their video and mute their mics unless they have something to say or are participating in committee dialogue. For members of the public, when I open the meeting to public comment, please unmute yourself or raise your hand by hitting *9 on your phone, or select raise your hand option by your name in the list of participants. If you're recognized, please state your name and address. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on the town's website. I hereby call this meeting to order. All committee votes will be taken by roll call. We'll start with an attendance roll call of committee members. When I announce your name, please reply here. Andrea Solomon.
Here.
Jerry Susi.
Here.
Leo Carroll.
Here.
Brian Davidson.
Here.
I'm Paul Cook. So we're all here. I would like to begin by just thanking Andrea for doing the deed signing for us. Since I'm down here in Texas, it's kind of hard to reach up there and sign them. So thank you, Andrea. The next proposed meeting is for February the 3rd, 2021. Is that okay with everyone? Any problem, anyone? No, okay. And then as far as the approval of the minutes go, have you read the minutes? Nice job, Justine. Any comments on the minutes? All right. Would someone like to move that we accept the minutes?
I move that we accept the minutes.
Thank you. Andrea Solomon moves to accept the minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Brian Davidson seconds.
It's Jerry. It's Jerry.
Oh, Jerry second. Jerry and Brian both seconded it. Okay, very good. All right, so let's have a roll call vote. Andrea.
I approve.
Jerry.
Yes.
Leo.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
And Paul, yes. All right. So the minutes of the December 2nd Cemetery Committee are hereby approved. Now it's time for the chair comments. I'd like to begin by saying thanks and complimenting Anna Trout for posting the new rates for all the various things in the cemetery, including the newly established rates for the mausoleums. Also, I'd like to thank her for posting the report of the new headstone restoration project. I think Aaron or Tish asked her to do it, and she did a nice job. The beautiful report that was done by our contractor is now online at the cemetery site. Sorry, I've somehow gotten videoed. So thanks, Anna, for doing that. If you haven't had a chance to visit the website, Concord MA Cemeteries, and look at the various things there, you'll see the site's looking pretty good. And it's very nice to see the Headstone Restoration Project report up there. The beautiful photos of all the stones that were fixed, nice work. And I also would like to mention that the tree sign project that the Friends did has also been put online at the Friends website, which is accessible through our website. So if you go to the Concord Cemetery website and you see there's on the menu you can over to the Friends site. On the Friends site, you can see the pictures of the various trees, the signs that they put up there, and so on. So that's nice to see too. Let me ask, while I'm still doing my chair comments, if anyone had any comments about the letter I wrote to Mallory Price. I sent everybody a copy of it. Comments? None. Okay. Aaron, you've got a copy too. I would like to do what we can to send that out.
Yes, Paul, we can do that.
Thank you. All right. And I don't remember how I put it, but if you would sign it for us, Aaron, I think that would, or I guess that would be the good way to do it. Anybody have any other suggestions of how to do that? Sign my name? I signed it, but for all of us.
I can sign it, that's fine, or if you want it to be from the, from the committee, Andrea could come in and sign it, your choice.
Andrea, what do you think? Is it necessary?
Either way, I'm happy to stop by and sign. I'm going to sign some deeds anyway for Tish, so
All right.
I'd be happy to sign it on behalf of all of us.
That would be great. Thank you, Andrea.
Okay, sure.
Then there was also a thank you letter to Kevin Plodzik and the Friends of Sleepy Hollow. And I think I sent a copy of that to everybody. Did anybody have any comments on that? Okay, I'd like to send that out to Kevin Plodzik too. Aaron, could we do that? Put that on our letterhead and send that out as well?
Yes, sir.
And Andrea, while you're signing one, would you sign the other?
Absolutely, yes. They were both really nice letters. I
Thank
think
you. Well,
they reflect our feelings.
we're very blessed to have the Friends. There's a very few Concord committees have a private committee sort of at their right hand, backing them up and supporting them. So I think it's very nice to have the Friends in our corner. Also, finally, I sent out an email to everybody asking for suggestions. I'm going to start the annual report probably later this week. Every year we have to send one in to the town. And I sent everybody a copy of the annual report for 2019. Some of you thought it was the report for 2020 because some of these things do overlap. But if you have any suggestions, I mean, I've got all the old agenda, all the old minutes and all that stuff. But if anybody has anything on their minds that they think we should be sure to include, please let me know when I'm drawing this thing up. You just send me an email, okay? Thanks. What else did I have? I wrote a short history of the first, 50 years of the Concord Cemetery Committee. I think I sent that out to everybody a few months ago. Do you remember that? If no one has find any serious faults with it, I'd like to put it up on the website under Cemetery Committee, early history of the Cemetery Committee. If anybody has any objections, we can talk about it, but if you don't, I'd like to do that. No objections?
Done.
Okay, all right. So I'll send that, Aaron, I'll send that over to you if you don't have it hanging around there.
Yeah, I'll, if you want to if you have any updates or any changes you want to add to the document, feel free to do so and then send it over.
Okay, great. All right, so let's move on to D2, the Concord Public Works Staff Report. Aaron McClasko, take it away.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, everyone. Aaron McClasko, Highway Ground Superintendent. So in the month of December, we had 9 interments, both full grave and includes full grave and cremations, and we had 3 lot sales. Otherwise, kind of uneventful, if you will. We've had 8 snow events in the town so far. So we've been working to clear snow from the pathways, and Tish has done a great job on keeping that cemetery as open as possible, Sleepy Hollow Cemetery as open as possible, as quickly after a storm. So I commend her for the extra efforts on that. And that's really it. We haven't, like I mentioned in the last meeting, the fall cleanup and seasonal maintenance kind of wrapped up for this season. I did give Mayor Tree authorization to do the tree work up in the cemetery. So they will be starting that this month. Budget was approved and we have a contract with them. So they will be up there, and there's a number of trees that have been marked with kind of engineer's tape and will be removed in January, some dead and hazard trees. So we'll have that done, which will be great. And everything else I kind of address in, I guess, the next item. D3, if you will. I have some items for that when we get to that item.
Aaron, I have one question for you, Aaron. When will your work on the 2022 budget need to be completed?
So I haven't yet received a budget directive. So the way it works for general fund budgets is the town manager will send out a budget directive to all department heads and division managers that are responsible for budgets. At that time, I'll follow that guidance, develop the budget for the cemetery. And whenever that date is, or I'm ready for it, whenever that directive comes out, we'll have it done. So I don't know the date yet of when it's due to the town manager because I've not received that.
Okay. Okay. Do we need to announce that a pug is also visiting the committee?
Yeah, he likes to sit in, make sure we don't forget anything.
All right. But he can't vote, Andrea. He's not allowed to vote.
That sounds fair.
Thank you, Aaron.
Paul, I assume that's going to be this month. So
Okay.
it will probably be before our next meeting.
All right. So if we want to talk, if we have any suggestions about budgetary matters, now's the time to voice them, I suppose.
I would say if we're related to, if you will, priority projects, I'd say everything else, operations and maintenance is pretty standard fare. I will go through those,
Okay.
follow the directive and make any my requests as needed, justify those, and then open to any input that the committee has for priority projects. That's where we can kind of allocate some more money either out of the cemetery fund if needed. If there are projects, which obviously we've had a few discussions in the last few meetings. I'm sure there'll be discussion later on this evening. If we need to earmark some funding within the cemetery budget for priority projects.
Okay.
All years.
Okay. All right. Let's go to D3. Update on committee's priority projects.
So record scanning project, we made lots of strides. I think that we have Boston Scan as the vendor. So I think I wrote there previously, we had an open PO, we executed the contract with them. They have visited the cemetery. They have completed all the record scanning of the hard, the actual physical scanning of the hard records into their system. They are working on digitizing all the lot cards and all the information that they took from us. That'll take weeks, if not, a month or 2 months to complete that process. And then from there, they will be available for access for cemetery staff as well as the public on their website. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah, we're excited. We're excited. Tish is working very closely with them and that company. They're actually going to be out tomorrow to work with Tish on some mapping, make sure that all that is accurate, so everything can kind of tie together. We have some GIS maps that'll coordinate with all the information. So
Wow. So you'll be able to match every card with a GPS location, or?
so they have like an interactive map. And if you go onto their website and look at some of the other cemeteries, I will say, for example, Maynard Cemetery, Glenwood Cemetery in Maynard, you can go and click by lot on a map, and it'll show you the lot information, the owner, who's interred there, the dates, whatever available information they want to make public. So
Wow.
type of way.
That's very impressive. That's great. Andrea emailed me today that she had popped into Tish's office. Andrea, do you want to give a brief testimony about what you saw?
Just the last time I went to sign deeds, there was a whole operation set up in the garage part of Tish's office, and many people scanning many documents. So they were very hard at work. It seemed like a very efficient process.
Great, great.
Yeah, the company that the town is contracted with, Boscan, is, in works collaboration with Cemetery Find. They are experts in what they do. So I'm glad what you saw was professional, look squared away, because that's what they promised us. And so far it's been nothing but good working relationship with them. And we're excited about the final product and what we can deliver for the town.
Yeah. Well, it's something that's been on our priority list for a long time. It's wonderful to see it being brought to completion. I think we can feel some satisfaction that we've seen a lot. In fact, all three of our priorities for this year are I think completed or in the process of being completed. So hats off to everyone for sticking with it. And thanks so much to you, Aaron and Tish, for sort of superintending this stuff all the way through.
Happy to help. Yeah, it's exciting. It's good. It's good for the town, good for the committee, and it'll be good,
Yeah.
good tools for everyone.
It's nice to have goals and then to actually see them reached.
Absolutely.
So Aaron, what about Headstone? Give us the update on the Headstone restoration.
So Tish has been working closely with Eric Shaw, assistant superintendent, on identifying, I think we have just under 60, maybe 59 or so stones that we intend to put out to bid to get pricing for restoration for the spring and summertime. We hope to kind of combine the FY21 and FY22 budgets. We might do two separate packages or one, depending on kind of where everything shakes out. We have enough stuff in order to identified in order to expend this year's funding as well as next year's funding. So right now that one's kind of a standby, just where we are with the season and everything else that we have going on in highway and ground operations. So we hope to get that out over the winter for a spring rollout.
I think that you've got almost twice as many headstones on this second set as you had on the first set. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, we hope to spend 2 years worth of money in one project. So I think that's,
Okay, so it makes sense. All right.
yeah, it's kind of our that's the plan as of today.
Okay, excellent. And the Mausoleum Sites, we've got the fair, the rates already posted. And so we've got 3 ready to sell. I have only one question about that. Do we want to publicize this thing in any way?
That's up to you. That's up to the committee, I guess. They're on the website. They're available. I included that information in with my director's report for the Public Works Commission as well, so they're aware.
Yeah. Committee members, do any of you have any thoughts on whether we should contact the Concord Journal or in some way let the world know that these are for sale, or should we just leave it there for the next time somebody comes along and wants to buy a mausoleum site?
Paul, if I could, I think it's certainly newsworthy kind of as a general piece of town news, but within the circles of, people who are interested in buying mausoleums or who kind of track what happens in cemeteries. I mean, it's newsworthy for a whole other reason for those folks. And I'd be in favor of, tastefully spreading the word in whatever ways seem appropriate.
Thanks, Jerry.
I wonder if, sorry. I was just wondering, maybe we could combine some of those, we have 2 great stories with the headstone repair and the mausoleums, so that it's not just, $1 million mausoleums are for sale, but, look at the terrific things that are going on in the cemetery from repair to these mausoleums are available.
That's good. Tish, I can't remember the name of the reporter who does feature stories, but has done, for example, she did something on the Melvin Memorial and on when we were thinking about new kinds of burial options. But you know her, and she came out and did a story.
Betsy Levinson.
Betsy, right. Do you think it's not worth trying to reach Betsy and letting her know and seeing if she's interested in doing a story?
Ask her. She has to check with the editor, and I can't remember his name right now, but I can ask her.
Yeah, Robert Fucci is the editor.
Yeah, he's the one who decides what's story worthy.
Yeah. Well, if you wouldn't mind reaching out to Betsy and just telling her, and you can even maybe include the website link to the report on all those completed headstones.
So, Paul, if I may, so the town, what I would actually recommend is that if the committee does want to try to publicize something, the town does have a chief information officer. Aaron Stevens is, I guess, the point of contact and liaison for all town news and information and kind of publicizing that. So I would say instead of us reaching directly out to the newspaper, we should go through the proper channels and go through Aaron Stevens to determine what, she would then be the person that kind of reaches out to the newspaper or shares any official information or news from the town or a town department to any media outlets. So I would ask if we could just, instead of Tish reaching directly out to a journalist, we just follow that procedure.
Anybody, any other comments on that? I don't have any, what's the town info officer's name, Aaron?
Aaron Stevens. And Paul, if you want to reach out to her directly, you can feel free to do so. That's fine as well. It's just, she is the designated person for all communications external to the town, official, she puts out the official press releases, the official notifications, news and notices come through her. I would just want to not circumvent that process. Well, I think it's totally fine to get it out there and get the information out there. We just want to make sure we're doing it.
Well, I'll tell you what, Aaron, if you'll send me, just email me her contact info, and I'll try to reach out to her and see what develops.
Sounds good. I will send it over to you this evening, Paul.
Okay. Any other comments from any other members of the committee about this publicity issue? Okay, why don't we go on to D4, the master plan continued discussion.
Oh, Paul, if you will, can we go back to D3 Mausoleum Sites? So I had included a informational item, the preliminary survey for the new section for the Mausoleum Sites, and I think the intention was try to discuss a couple, where we might put the additional mausoleum sites in the newer section, which
right. You got that down at the bottom of D4. I thought we could wait till we get there.
Oh, that's fine too. Yeah, sorry, that's fine. Either way. Sorry, I didn't realize that one.
Because these are three things that we've done, and now we're moving on to since we've done them, we have room for new priorities. We've got these 5 things. And I think we can discuss, I definitely want to do that, Aaron, that last issue. Okay. But why don't we go down the line in order here? And I think each one of these new potential priorities is attached to a name. Leo, I wanted to let you, I know you've been in touch with Aaron a little bit about this, but if you would like to say something about it, that'd be a good time.
Okay. Yeah, I met with Aaron yesterday, and thank you, Aaron, for spending the time. We mainly looked at the condition of the stone walls, and that's a little further down on our agenda. But we also looked a little bit into the trees, and it's my understanding there is a budget item that allows for some tree planting. And the issue is mainly where do we want the trees to be planted? And what's very exciting about all this is that once we have the maps online during a meeting like this, we can actually go right to the spot and look at where it's going to be, where we're suggesting that it be planted. And so there are several issues. I think I've touched on this in the past, but I'm learning a lot about how the cemetery works, and it's that people own the plot, so we can't just put a tree on someone's plot. However, with this map, we can see where areas are where we can put down trees. And so what I've been doing is I've been looking at where the burnt spots are because there's too much direct sunlight on some of this turf, and then looking at where a tree had been, and there is a stump, so that now we no longer have that blocking the sun out of a spot is getting burnt. So many cases, it turns out that tree stump is on someone's lot. So what I thought the first thing we could do is just go put one next to the stump isn't going to be possible. Or let me say this, I think it would be a bit of a chore to go and find the person who owns the lot, especially in the older part of the cemetery. I think they've been dead for 3 or 4 generations and didn't leave a forwarding address. And so, so we have to work around that largely. And so now with the, access to the maps, I think we can see that there are a number of places where the old wagons, the old carts, funeral cart used to go between rows of graves. That is property that's owned by the cemetery and not by private lot. So we know now, I know now at any rate, that it's limited where you can put these trees in, but we're finding some good spots. And so the second thing is that what type of a tree do you put in? And my suggestion is that if we're trying to block out sunlight a little ways away from where the tree is being planted, that we should go with some of the typical native species that tend to grow pretty high, like maples and elms and things of that nature. But this is something that doesn't have to be dealt with directly because there are no trees going to be planted until springtime. And I think by that time, a couple of things. One, we'll all be inoculated against this COVID. And 2, we'll be able to look at the maps and say, everyone will understand where the trees are going to go and what type are going to be put in. So that's, I think we've made really good progress, and Aaron's very supportive, and there's money for it, and it's in the works.
That's great, Leo. I just want to encourage you to keep on doing what you're doing and supporting Aaron. And this is something that you're passionate about, and I think we ought to, take advantage of it.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Anybody have anything they want to add on this one? Go ahead.
Well, if I just want to express thanks to Leo for really focusing on this. In relation to other projects, I've just been thinking and looking a lot at the aesthetics of the whole Sleepy Hollow and the idea of tree canopies, different levels, the idea of trees shading grassy areas and protecting them and so forth. I just think that's such an important part of what Sleepy Hollow is all about. So I'm glad of this.
Yeah. And we've just had this.
Well, let me just say this, Jerry, I'm retired. I got a lot of time to think about this stuff.
Leo is a man of many talents. I don't know if you know, he knows how to make guitars from scratch, among other things. Plus, he makes some pretty nice chairs too. So he's got lots of hobbies to keep himself occupied. Plus, he knows that territory of not only the cemetery proper, but all the woods behind it. He grew up hanging out there. He knows it really, really well. He's like an old naturalist, a woodsman. I'm really glad you're on the committee, Leo.
Thank you.
Yes, anything else? Okay.
If you want me to, I can go over these stone walls too and get both of them done now.
We'll come back in a second.
All right, okay.
So might as well stay in order. Not that it's absolutely necessary. But let's go to the next one. It's the Columbaria with Andrea and Jerry.
Well, we haven't been able to meet. I'm hoping we could meet maybe when the weather gets nicer, meet outside, because I think it has to be a public meeting with Aaron and Tish, and maybe just go over. I know in past meetings, probably before Jerry joined, we had talked more about the exact location of where Columbaria would go. So we could go over that again with whoever shows up to that meeting. And then the other thing that would be great to get is the elevations, which I know, Aaron, when you have a chance, you'll get those, but that's, again, maybe something we could do when the weather gets better. And then the other thing that I had mentioned last time was perhaps getting a sketch of a potential columbarium by a company that had offered to do it for us a couple years ago, free of charge, that Tish had mentioned. And so maybe we could follow up with that Tish, if you remember, it's Hardy Doric. If they're still available to do that, that would mean we could get started on some semblance of what it would look like before it got put into a budget to pay for. So,
Right.
but yeah, we haven't met because
Yeah.
we're hoping to do that outside at some point.
Okay. Thanks, Andrea. Jerry, you want to add anything to what Andrea said?
Yeah, please. Yeah, and I've still been kind of a little befuddled as to how to, kind of navigate the subcommittee thing. And I've been reluctant to like say, oh, here's what I've been doing, or here's what I found, because I don't want to, run afoul of what the procedure we're supposed to be following. If I could take the screen for a few minutes and just kind of share my thinking on some stuff for the group, if that would be all right. Okay.
Seems good to me. Sure.
Okay.
Any objections? Okay, go ahead, Jerry.
All right. So let's just take like 5 minutes to look at some things from a high level. So what you should be seeing now is the Google Maps satellite photo of the new section of Sleepy Hollow. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. I just first want to direct your attention to something over here, and this is St. Bernard's Cemetery. And I just want to point out, like many cemeteries in the area, it follows a grid pattern. You zoom in close and it's very much, cheek by jowl. That's not what we have at all over here. I also want to add, in relation to those kind of tiny little urban cemeteries, or where there's following a grid. I went to a burial recently, and I thought it would be quicker to kind of walk across the graves to where my car was, as opposed to taking a little loop around. And as I walked, I could feel the slight variation in the surface, from the vaults not exactly being at the same level. And the whole thing was just very unsettling, I guess. And that's a common experience in cemeteries, but certainly not at Sleepy Hollow. One thing is you're not looking at a grid, you're looking at arcs and circles and wedges, and really a lot of variety, right? This is the area set aside for Jewish burials. This is the front area that Aaron had assessed for Mausoleum Sites. And, here's, sorry, folks, the back area is somewhere in here. The oval, the fact that it's not entirely flat, there's kind of like a nice rise as you go up here. And you've also got these kind of concentric circles, these steps, and it's just a very interesting and pleasant aesthetic. And if we look at the general area where, we're talking about the Columbarium, it builds on that. It's off on the side. There's the potential to have, trees nearby or as part of the scene. There's also water in here. So that's kind of what we're working with. And, it's a beautiful place within a beautiful place. I'm just going to switch over to my Pinterest board and just kind of show a couple of quick examples of some columbariums. Yeah, here we go. So you could basically get whatever you want if what you're looking at or looking for is your basic, stand-up unit. This is very similar to what we saw at the last meeting, where they were offloading it from a truck. It's about 8,000 or 10,000 pounds. You can see that, it's possible to build, the vaults or the containers within the context of a larger structure. So it doesn't look like a freestanding thing. And then just a couple of quick kind of semi-random thoughts is just looking at how within that kind of semi-wooded water meadow setting, there are things that you can do that aren't just flat. And then finally, certainly one of the most moving places I've been, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. This isn't the best view. I won't get into a whole slide thing, but again, just the experience of walking into a ground and having the structure kind of grow with you and then shrink away is really, really powerful. So I'll stop the share. And, you know, and again, just say that, you know, the setting, the design, this is something that, you know, merits substantial thought. And I think it's also an opportunity to do some kind of outreach. I don't know if it's community outreach or if it's outreach into the landscaping design community or whatever. But, you know, one of the things that I think would be important for us moving forward is for each of us to put some thought into it, but also to get some guidance and some other thoughts as to what this thing should look like. Again, the easiest would be, you know, a unit of certain size kind of set down, and, you know, you could go to a second one and a third one as things expand. You know, right now, I guess I'm thinking of something that's a little more integrated into the site. And then finally, just kind of relating that to the budget issues, if there is some kind of evaluation or design process that, you know where to start there, but would probably want to account for that as well. That's what I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Jerry. I think as far as what you and Andrea are commissioned to do is to just put your heads together with ideas like you've just spoken of and things that Andrea's spoken of, and then come back to us and tell us what you think. And then if you want to have a public hearing to get in more ideas, well, as we did with the Mausoleum project, we can do that too. I think it's a great idea to sort of step back and get a bird's eye view and think about integrating it into the topography of the scene or the geography of the new section. It could be a beautiful thing and not just a utilitarian thing. So I think that's a good. I'm completely on board with that idea. As far as the
if I could just mention too that when we originally talked about this, Tish had, I think, brought up this idea to begin with, but I think we all liked it too, was that it was going to be built into that hillside so that when you walk down the stairs toward that little pond, if you were to turn around, then the columbarium would be built into that hillside that the stairs are coming down. And I think, Jerry, if I quickly saw on the bottom of your screen a sketch that sort of almost showed what she had originally brought up to our committee, that, you know, it would be very well integrated into that landscape in a kind of cool and aesthetically pleasing way. That at the time anyway, we all thought would be great, but it's really been a while since we all talked about that specific design.
Yeah.
But you had a sketch that I think showed that, and I don't know if that was, I don't know if I was seeing what I thought I was seeing, but it was very similar to what we had originally talked about.
Well, I've got it on my Pinterest screen, so yeah,
Okay.
it's completely unrelated. It's like a suggested thing. Oh, you might want to look at this, and I think it's more like a park. But you know, that's kind of like the guiding concept right now. I mean, I'm you know, it's exciting to hear that the vision has kind of been there all along, and it really is true. I got to tell you, walking down that paved path, it comes up on you. You know, you're not walking to something that you know is there. You're kind of discovering it, you know, when it comes up on your left. So one of the things I'd ask for some guidance on, you know, it would be helpful for Andrea and I to, you know, if we would get together at the site, for example, and kind of toss things back and forth. I don't want to like do anything that comes back procedurally to haunt. So what can I do? how can I communicate with, how can Andrea and I and act together and stay within, the guidelines of what we're supposed to be doing?
I think what you're doing right now is pretty good. I mean, just talking together, thinking independently, visiting the site, coming back to us with what you found, suggestions. That's what we're looking for until such point as we're ready to pay somebody to come up with a formal design, which is, you touched on the need to budget some money. Aaron has talked about it too. We have some money which we could earmark for a design and preliminary design work. So that's how I see it. I don't think it's not a very complicated charge. We know that. Yeah.
I just want to be sure that it's okay. So if I were to reach out to Andrea and talk or exchange emails about different things and exchanging data, that's okay.
Well, there is the whole issue
Or do we have to
there is the issue of this is just a procedural issue that the town and the state of Massachusetts are concerned about. If you are going to talk about the issues together, you are constituting a subcommittee, and so minutes have to be taken. And the public has to be invited. As far as I know, Aaron, you can help us with this. If you guys want to just talk to, it is a little bit, it can be a little bit of a burden. Every time you want to talk, you've got to turn it into a formal meeting. I don't know how we can avoid that though. I think if it's over 2 people, it becomes an official meeting. Aaron, fill us in on that. I'm not sure I remember. Or maybe Susan, you can help us too on this.
I think for subcommittee, if it's 2 people and your committee is 5, it's not a quorum, but it is a subcommittee. And the procedure would be that you have to post it at least 2 business days before and announce the location. So if people want to come, they can. But yeah, that's the process. And then you do have to record minutes and post them.
Yeah, so that's a little bit, you can't formally get together at, Helen's and have a cup of coffee and kick it around. It has to be a formal thing, as Susan has outlined for us. But I mean, that's what we're doing right now, and it can be quite informal. It just has to be, records have to be kept and the public needs to be invited.
So if you wanted to meet, let's say at the cemetery and look at the grounds, you could email me or Justine and say, you want to meet on whatever day it is, and we'll just put a quick posting together and send it out. It just needs to be posted 48 hours in advance of the meeting. And then if you want, one of you folks can take minutes or supply that back to us, and we can just keep that for the record, or we can have something like, if I'm going to be there, or Tish or Justine or Eric, or someone from my staff will be there, and if you need us there to discuss or want us there, we can be there. So we can help with the procedural items, and then if you have information you want to share with everybody, what we'll do oftentimes, like we did with it's okay to share information, but once people start replying, you cannot reply all to that. That's why I typically will blind copy when I send out information to a full committee, to avoid anybody accidentally hitting reply all and sending information back to everybody.
That constitutes.
So I can send information to everybody. If somebody wants to send me the info and say, please distribute, we can do that from a staff level to board members.
Yeah.
Thanks. That really clarifies it for me very well. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the information that Andrea has been talking about up to last time and today, and the things that you shared today, Jerry, these are valuable steps towards the goal of getting a columbarium there, the one that we'll be proud of. And I think that probably it'd be important at this point, since this is the time that Aaron is working on a budget, that we discuss earmarking or setting aside some money for when, in the next few months ahead, when you've come up with enough information, we're ready to go ahead and get a design started or some preliminary work on it, that we've got it. And if we don't use it all, that's okay. It's better to have it and not use it, I think, than to need it and not have it. So I'd like to suggest we set aside a sum to cover that kind of design expense. Beyond what the free offer they gave us, Andrea, there may be need for more than that. So I don't know how much we should think about. Maybe, Aaron, you've got a suggestion.
I would say, $5,000 to $10,000 for design. If we use it, we use it. If not, we can use it towards other things. But right now in the budget, as planned, there's $30,000 for priority projects, an additional $10,000 for headstone restoration. So.
And okay, well, I'm happy to suggest that we set aside $10,000 for this project, if everyone thinks that's a good idea, and we'll make this one of our priorities since we've satisfied our requirements for these 3 that we've been working on all year. I think we have room for a few more. I'd like to make the Columbarium one of them and set aside $10,000 to begin planning, designing, so on and so forth. If we need it, we'll have it. So that's my proposal. And if you think that's a good one, we can go ahead with that. We can vote on it and so on.
I think that's a great idea. I think I would definitely agree with that.
So that's my proposal. Do we have a second?
Second.
Brian Davidson seconds it. Let's vote. We'll go down the roll. Brian?
Aye.
Andrea?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Leo?
Aye.
And I say aye as well. So it is passed. We've set aside $10,000. And we just want to encourage our subcommittee on the Columbarium to keep up the good work.
So just for budget, procedural for the budget process, what I'll do is I will, after we get through the rest of the priority project discussion, depending on whatever that number is, let's say if it holds to the $30,000, what I will do is I will keep that line item called priority projects, and then in my justification in the notes for my supporting documents for why I'm making the request, I will list that as a reason for $10,000 in the budget.
Great. Because I want to talk about budgeting some more money in a minute. So it's good we started off with that, Aaron, how we're going to continue. I'd like to go on to the undeveloped land use. Brian, if you have something you would like to say about that.
Yeah, I don't think we've progressed too far. I think, with the pandemic and the winter and stuff, I kind of see this maybe as more, kicking off in the spring project, getting together perhaps with the trails folks just to kind of walk through and get a feel for what they're thinking, what they're seeing, voicing our concerns, working with them. Maybe utilizing Leo's great expertise, and I know he has a lot of thoughts on particularly the trails to the back area there. So I haven't really progressed right now, but I think once the pandemic eases a little bit and we're able to kind of get out there in person and talk with folks, maybe kind of elevate this issue. But I have seen it has been cars parked down there. It seems like the trails and that path in particular is getting a lot of visitors during these pandemics, at least on the weekends. So that's kind of the status update for that one.
Yeah, you're talking right down there at Chestnut Tish, the area that's at the dead end, right where the bridge is. Is that the area where you're talking about, Brian, where there's been a lot of cars?
Well, I have seen some there, but even on the knoll and the circle, I've seen a few cars where, I haven't seen anybody at the cemetery, so I'm assuming that they're kind of walking, some of those trails back there and whatnot. But it hasn't. I wouldn't say it's been, crazy, but I have seen maybe 1 or 2 cars parked there on a Saturday type of thing. It's not something that's overwhelming for sure, but just I know that's one of the rules that we have, so no parking. So I'm just saying that that space back there is getting usage, and so I think when the spring comes, we should definitely think about I know there's a lot of discussion in your notes, Paul, about the signage and setting deciding if we want people to walk bicycles on some of the more sensitive trails there. So, but I do think it's probably something to take up more in the spring, hopefully in summer, and to get a good handle on it.
We'll kind of come back to that in a second under D5, Brian. But I wondered, Andrea, I think you took that walk a few years ago. We took a walk with the Trails Committee through the swamp.
Yes.
Can you remind everybody about what happened there?
Well, in terms of, we were walking with them to see if we could put up a boardwalk, which turned out would be incredibly expensive. We would have to have it compliant for people who may be using wheelchairs, and that would require a turnaround in the middle, which made it a little more complicated also. But I'm not even sure if we mentioned the very high cost, an exact number of the high cost that it was going to be, because it was already way outside what we thought we could afford.
Yeah.
So.
I think I saw past notes and it was like hundreds of thousands of dollars to do the boardwalk.
Yeah, to make it secure and long lasting would be very expensive.
It was a beautiful idea to run it from,
Yeah.
it would connect the old and the new cemeteries by going through the swamp. And we all thought, oh, that's a great idea, until we got the price tag on it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe in some future date, there'll be some way that can happen. But in any case, all right, thanks, Brian. Let's take a look at the cemetery stone walls. Leo.
Once again, thanking Aaron for spending the time yesterday and walking through the cemetery and looking at the stone walls and the condition that they're in. And so the way we're looking at this is that there's probably two categories of these stone walls. One is the ones that are going to be very expensive to fix. And those are, for instance, the ones are around the Old Hill Burying Ground, the center of town, and then along Bedford Street. And we're talking, I think, hundreds of thousands of dollars on that. And Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it's a pretty big expenditure, way beyond what we've currently got in the budget right now. So an effort has to be made to go after that, I think, separately than what I've been looking at. And that is that there are a number of stone walls in the cemetery that are in various stages of deterioration. They're not all falling apart, but some of them are falling apart, but they still can be fixed at this point. And so what we looked at is those stone walls where a question of just doing the pointing, putting the mortar in between the rocks and, trying to brace it back up that way can be done. There's a number of them that can be done on, but then there's other stone walls that if you take a close look at them, you'll see, for instance, that they're bulging out at the bottom. They're kind of like retaining walls. And unfortunately, when they were built, they did not put in what's called a weep hole. And what that is fundamentally is just a drainage system. They do it today with this polyvinyl chloride or PVC piping, and it allows built-up water behind a wall to actually drain out without doing any damage to the structure of the wall. So there are a couple of places in the existing walls that probably need some work done at that level, and that might be beyond what we can afford. But what Aaron and I concluded at the end of this was that there are several projects, several walls that could be fixed within the budget. They can't all be done at once, but there are several that can be fixed within the budget, and it's a case of prioritization of those. What I'm finding out there is that, sometimes a car will hit the wall or various other things happen to cause some of the rocks to pop out. And I hate to see those, get lost. I mean, if they're right there, what I try to do, I try to stick them back where they were, but it doesn't last for too long. And we've had a particularly bad year this year because, we went through this very, very dry year, and then we had some pretty significant rainfalls afterwards, and that that took its tolls on the wall. I know I've talked to Tish, and she's going around doing the same thing I'm doing. If she finds a rock that's popped out of the wall, she tries to put it back or put it nearby so that when we get to the point where we can, just remortar these things and put a Band-Aid on it, then it'll be nearby. So what we're going to do is just prioritize the walls that can be fixed within our budget in the near term. And there's they're mostly right around the Melvin Memorial. There are some other walls, and this is going to take a little further thought, but for instance, the one on Daniel Chester French's grave. I don't know if any of you had a chance to go up there and look at it, but it just collapsed. And and the actual the rounded granite and the big rocks are just falling down the side of that hill near where the mausoleums are going to be, but not directly next to them. And so it's a question of how do we get that one fixed, and when do we get it fixed, and how much is it going to cost? So I think what Aaron had talked about is putting a request for proposals together, and am I still here? A request for proposals together, and getting a professional mason to come in and do this work, and doing it in let's just say in bite-sized chunks. I don't think we can do everything at once, but we can get some of those. We can put a stop on the deterioration fairly quickly.
I think that's excellent. I think that's excellent. In other words, what we could be doing is something in the area of stone walls that's like what we're doing in the area of headstone preservation.
Exactly.
Every year, dedicate. Yeah. So I think Leo, I hope you'll keep working with Aaron and put that priority list together. What needs to be worked on, and we can, and then maybe we should budget some money for this next cycle so that we can begin getting that stonemason that you mentioned or bids for that. I don't know how that would be done, Aaron. So we can start working on restoring those walls, or at least stopping the deterioration of them. Susan.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in, when you get to the point about putting together a plan and a budget and the funding needs, that the Community Preservation Act can be a source of funding. I think it was about 1.9 million that they funded this year. It comes partly from our property tax, and then there's some state match. But the committee in the past several years has been quite favorable towards town-sponsored projects. In this, one of the categories is historical preservation, which seems to me this would nicely fit into. So just keep it in mind and they typically don't want to fund the entire thing, but they're definitely a source to consider.
That's excellent, Susan. Thank you. I think that is a very good idea. I think perhaps it would, Aaron, you would have to be the applicant for the money if we went to the Concord Preservation Act people. And if we say we wanted to put, $75,000 towards this, and they ask them for 25, or we want to put 100 towards it and ask them for 50, or something like that.
I would flip the numbers. Ask them for more than they'd love to see a 50-50 match, but they consider projects that, if you did ask for 75 and said you'd contribute 25, I think that's a reasonable ask, or at least with the way the committee is constituted at the present time.
Thank you. I would like to ask, since there's easily $100,000 worth of work to do, don't you think? Just on these small repairs. So let's not be shy about asking for as much of it as we can. And I think Leo, you and Aaron can put your heads together with your work on this and come up with the kind of ask that we should ask for, and then apply for the CPA funds, and we could take a bigger bite out of this than maybe I was thinking we could.
And
Okay.
it's usually September. They'll publish a schedule. They're just finishing up the projects that will go to town meeting. But September is normally the deadline for application submission. So those will be posted, but just kind of keep that in the back of your mind.
Thank you.
Super. Any other comments on this, on what Susan has suggested and on what Leo has been telling us about? So Aaron, in the meantime, you have a budget to complete within perhaps the next month or so. How much could we don't know what we're going to start, but we know that we could use a good hunk of money on this. How much do you think? I know you talked about 30,000. We've just spent 10 on our Columbarium project, and the Concord, the Headstone project is separate now, right? It's a different issue, a different pot of money.
It's a different line item, yes.
Yeah. So,
The way that it would work is that, I'm developing the budget right now for FY22, which in theory, if it's approved through the, town manager, the select board, FinCom, and eventually town meeting, and it would be available July 1st. Any CPA application that we put in for September would be available the following July 1st, so that the following fiscal cycle. So, I think we would, excuse me, try to earmark some of the money in this year's upcoming FY22 budget to do some maintenance and repointing, call it $10,000, something along those lines. And we just get a contract in here to do what we can for some restoration, smaller repairs, etc. And in the meantime, work with our engineering department to do an assessment on some of these larger scope projects and related to the walls, and put together a cost estimate and use that assessment and that cost estimate to then ask the CPA for money during the next application cycle.
okay. Thoughts on what Aaron just said? So Aaron, we talked about 30 before. We just talked about putting 10 aside for the Columbarium. That would give us, we could still have 20 towards this.
I wouldn't use it all up. I think things come up. So I would say maybe, if we just, depending on how much work we want to do in the walls. I mean, the walls have been there. Leo pointed out a wall that, was it your uncle or grandfather that had built in 1957, 58. Right?
Yep.
It's still there, and that was one that we might want to repoint at. So I would say, we try to do some kind of identify some of the smaller projects and maintenance items that we need just to touch up, maybe $10,000, something like that, in the budget. But the way that the line item in the budget is what it's called is priority projects. So that gives me the flexibility to spend that money on the priority projects of the cemetery committee, right? So if the committee tells me that these specific projects are their priorities, that's what I'm going to focus our operations on and get done. So if we want to kind of if you say, hey, Aaron, roughly allocate a third of that money to doing stone wall restoration, that's what we'll focus on for next year.
All right. What does everybody think? So let's agree that we are going to appropriate, second here. That we're going to appropriate 1/3 of our. So Aaron, what determines the size of that pot? Is that arbitrary, that 30,000, or?
I mean, that's been the historical request for a number of years. In the past budget books that I've looked at, it's been 30,000. That's the number that's held. Obviously, capital project and maintenance have been supplemented throughout the years from whether it's larger capital requests, borrowing previous CPA money for roads projects, etc. But that line item in the budget has been $30,000. I don't anticipate that being increased and being funded additionally from the general fund this year. There's no one where the budget is going. And unless we were to increase it and fund it from the cemetery fund, which we could.
Yeah. Well, we haven't, it's not an emergency. And I think if we just prime the pump with a smaller amount, the 10 that you suggest, as a way of getting ourselves ready to really ask for a much bigger sum from the Concord Preservation Act, and also ourselves contribute a bigger sum. I feel comfortable just going with that smaller ask. It would be nice to see, I think this Susan's idea is something we should really follow through on. I think that CPA helped us with the actually redoing that other wall, that very nice wall that goes down towards the Arthur's Ridge when we did redid the roadways. I think the CPA helped us with, oh, I don't know, I can't remember, a couple $100,000 for that project. All right. So I'd like to move that we dedicate $10,000 in the 2022 budget toward this project that Leo has been telling us about, and Aaron, just starting to address these problems with our stone walls, but with the note that we want to hopefully apply for CPA funds in the summer or the next time we can, and ask our cemetery superintendent to do that for us. So that's the proposal, that we dedicate 10,000 for the stone wall restoration, and that we ask our superintendent to apply for CPA funds for a bigger project in the succeeding year. That would be 2023. Would someone like to second that motion?
I second that motion.
Andrea Solomon seconds the motion. Let's take a vote. Leo Carroll.
Aye.
Jerry Susi.
Aye.
Brian Davidson.
Aye.
Andrea Solomon.
Aye.
Paul Cook. Aye. It passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Aaron, thank you for when you get around to it. It's something else we're putting on your back. I know you're a busy guy, but thank you. All right. So let's go now to the very last one, the mausoleum sites for the new area of Sleepy Hollow. And Aaron has provided us with a very nice map. Aaron, if you'd like to say something about this, let's go ahead with that.
Absolutely. So one of the informational items that was sent out with the agenda is the plan titled Town of Concord Public Works Entrance to Sleepy Hollow and Town of Concord Public Works Northwest Knoll of Sleepy Hollow. Proposed mausoleum sites. This was a survey that was completed in-house of the two areas that the committee had requested we survey for potential mausoleum lots in the new area of Sleepy Hollow. So that's what you see is you know, both of those areas could be potential locations for mausoleum lots. Paul, I know we've had some discussion ahead of the meeting. I had some subsequent discussion with Tish. So I will turn it over to Tish to kind of go through. I'm going to share my screen. So we have a plan to look at. I'm just going to share one of the plans that was sent out. Can everyone see the plan?
Yeah.
Very nice.
So this is the Bedford Street. This is the entrance. This is the first area that we had talked about. This is the second area closer to the cemetery offices over in this area. This is the second area along the rear wood line. And Tish, if you want to kind of give me, give the cemetery committee and the attendees an overview of the discussion we had earlier about future development.
So in the initial plan of this area, heading, I guess, northwest from what you're looking at right now is woods, but 5 acres of those woods is slated to be burial space at some point. So if you were to put mausoleums in this particular area right now, they're going to end up in what probably will be the middle of the cemetery. If in fact we do at some point expand into the wooded area, which eventually we will need that space. This area wouldn't have that issue. There's a couple of things I like about using here. One is we're never going to expand anywhere to the left or below because the street is there and it's private property behind the tree line. Also, this area stays shaded because of the trees that are out in front on Bedford Street and on the side. Stays shaded and it stays very wet, not an area that's great to dig in. So if we were going to put mausoleums anywhere, this would be a good spot for it.
So what we're recommending from a staff to the committee is that this front area as a place to install possibly one or two lots and add these to the plan. The committee can, if they approve it, that can be what's on the plan. And if there's future interest for additional lots or to move the lots, that could be carried out at a future meeting. But that would be the department's recommendation of the committee, that utilize this front area as opposed to the area to the north.
Questions about any of this?
What was that?
Questions? Anyone have any questions of Tish or of Aaron on the possible location of cemetery mausoleum plots on either of these two survey maps?
I had a question from a historical perspective. When the knoll was being designed, were mausoleums ever considered? Was there any spaces ever considered for mausoleums? Did they decide they didn't want mausoleums as part of the conversation? I mean, it seems like they have a number of other areas designated for different things, but they never designated any mausoleums. So I was wondering if people didn't want mausoleums. It wasn't discussed. What about culturally sensitive? I know there was, some Native American area. Is this area near that area at all?
So above where you see it says approximate 100-foot wetland buffer, a little above that, between these two sections, basically, there's two areas that have been set aside. There's a rock in one, a dedicated rock, and there's a bench in the other. They both measure, I don't know, like 10 by 12 or 15, something like that. Those two squares have been designated historically significant areas, and we won't dig in them, but there will be grave spaces around them someday.
Thank you.
Other questions of Tish or Aaron regarding this? Tish and Aaron, I have a question on the map of the northern part of the two. Yes, over on the far left, which would be the far west, I suppose. Is that also on the tree line? Is that on the edge, rather, of the property?
Not on the edge of the property, but it's on the edge of the wood line.
So there's more.
To the left is wetlands. We're not going to expand into that.
Right. So in other words, if you were to build a mausoleum on the far edge of that, on the left of it, it would be on the side of the future growth of the cemetery, even though it would expand to the north and there would be lots of graves up there. This would not be quite so much in the middle as on the side of all that.
I don't know where the line is, honestly. It would be to the side, but it could still end up in the middle of what is future expansion sites. I don't know. I don't know where the line is in the woods that we can go to. I don't know how far left, looking at this map, I don't know how far left we can go.
Okay, and on the other side, the other map, the map that towards the Bedford Street, you say even though the altitude is lower, I mean, the topography, it says 146 feet, whereas on the northern survey, it's 143, which is lower. Nonetheless, this part on Bedford Street, you say, is wetter?
Yeah, it doesn't get any sun.
Because it doesn't get any sun. And mausoleum is not going to be, there will be a need to put a foundation under it, but that shouldn't be a problem.
Right.
Okay, so the thought that Aaron had, and I talked to Aaron earlier, we talked about maybe putting two potential plots in each of these sites. We don't have to deal with the northern one if we don't want to, but at least opening up two potential sites for sale in the northern in the new section. And as we saw last time, they would be somewhat less expensive. And Tish said she did have a request at one point from somebody who wanted to build a mausoleum in the new area. Is that right?
Yeah, but he died.
Right, he died, but somebody may ask again. And if so, if they do, we'd have something ready to sell. So I guess the idea is we could designate a couple of plots, even as we did in the old Sleepy Hollow section, that we would put for sale. I guess the question is, do we want to put any in the, I'm certainly, I would like to put at least 2 plots in the southernmost side, the one that's closest to Bedford Street. And I'm open to putting one on the edge of the northern plot. But in any case, I guess the question is, where would they be in the, say, the one that's on the Bedford Street side? Is there any suggestions from Aaron or Tish about where, or any of the committee members, about where the plot, where the mausoleum plots would be in this section?
I would say someone that's
Yeah,
kind of
tree
looking at it overlay somewhere in this general area.
Yep.
Along the tree line, either in the front or to the west. I'm going to try to share one more view with the group, if you don't mind. So can everyone see the plan here? Everyone see the plan side by side?
Ah, good, excellent.
So here's kind of what we're looking at. Here's the row of the trees, is this row of these trees. So we're thinking somewhere in this area.
All right.
This area.
Committee members, any thoughts on putting 2 plots? They would be 20 by 20, right, Tish? That's the size we have in the the old part. So they would be 20 feet by 20 feet. They could be adjacent to each other. I think that would be all right. Any thoughts on that?
I'm not sure I personally love the idea of having mausoleums that stand above the ground. I think, you know, in the old part of the section, it was part of the original plan, there was precedent, and it was built into the hillside, so it fit its natural surroundings. I think of Sleepy Hollow, I think of it as a garden cemetery, and, you know, having these structures, I think diminishes to some degree that nature aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Other thoughts on Brian's comment? Well, the cemetery committee does have control over design. And it is true, if you do any study of British garden landscape design, you see they often are beautiful little structures. They're often very white. I guess they're made of white marble and things. You see these little structures in the midst of the gardens. Obviously, it is a man-made thing. It's not entirely natural, but it's designed to fit into the surroundings. So it would not necessarily violate the aesthetic of the cemetery, at least not in my view, if it were done in a tasteful way that was controlled by the aesthetic of the overall cemetery.
I also think it's potentially a poor use of space as well. I think that, you know, it takes up a lot of space. I think that, you know, we also have a number of things that come before us with headstones of different sizes, where we've told people, you know, they have to go smaller, and now we're going to kind of allow these large 20 by 20 structures to be built. I mean, you know, obviously I'm just one person, it's just my opinion, but that's where I would stand.
Well, it's good. Everybody should feel free to express their opinion, even if we don't agree. Any other comments? on what Brian has said?
I would just say that when Tish and I took our road trip and went around and saw all kinds of examples of mausoleums, there were really lovely mausoleums in places, especially the Newton Cemetery, that were standalones and looked great. I mean, they had nice landscaping, they were very tastefully done. And especially if we were using them in an area that wasn't going to be used for anything else, I think they could actually add a lot of character to an otherwise barren area of the cemetery.
Is that true? Is this a barren area? If we didn't put them there, there would be nothing there?
Eventually, there'll probably be graves there. I hope not in my lifetime or while I'm working there.
Tish,
It's not a great area to be working in. When I say wet, I mean it's a groundwater. It's a wet, not nice area to be in.
but not too wet to walk to. No, I mean, not too wet to use at all.
Right. To dig in is not good.
What we did, was it last month, we did discuss prices for a mausoleum in the new section, and we agreed that we would make them less expensive. And at that time, I guess we didn't really get around to discussing whether it would be a bad idea at all or a good idea at all to even have a mausoleum in the new section. I guess we assumed that it would be all right. Brian has raised an aesthetic, historic aesthetic point. I think it's a debatable point, but it is a point. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, this is Leo. I'd like to make a comment. I think if you're driving on Bedford Street and you're heading towards Concord Center, you go past the entrance and then there's a rather steep decline. So these mausoleums would be not really visible immediately from Bedford Street, I think, assuming that those trees stay up. And if the trees are up, I just think it's not a bad idea to put those there if the ground, isn't going to be good for, single lot burials. It just seems that if like Paul, if you don't think it would look good, then there's a possibility of putting more trees around them. So people want mausoleums, and there's really no evidence that is the case yet. And we're going to put them in. That seems as good a place to me as any.
I suppose I just wanted to be ready. It was in the case with Mr. Farb, approached us 6 years ago and wanted to buy a mausoleum. We said, what? What? We don't have any for sale. And it took us 6 years to set it up so that now we've got 3 plots for sale should someone like Mr. Farb show up again. And we had someone come to Tish in the not too distant past, though they're no longer in a position to want to buy one, who was interested in buying a place in this new section. We didn't have anything to offer. So we're now in a position to pretty much get ready to offer something if we want to vote on it in the new section, should somebody come along again and say, hey, I'd like to buy a mausoleum plot in your new section for half the price that you're charging in your old section. So I would like to be ready for that if we don't have any strong reason, and I think Brian believes he does have a strong reason, but how long ago was it I was outvoted 4-1 on the committee and I just had to just deal with it? So if you think it's a good idea, then we now have an opportunity to vote on it and set aside 2 plots. As I say, I think perhaps they could be adjacent to each other in this section that we were looking at. Should someone come along and want to buy one. Further thoughts before I take the bold step of making a proposal?
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts on this. One is that we do have the $3 million plot. So if Robert Kraft or someone like that wants to get buried, there's place for him. But a lot of people don't want to spend $1 million for a plot, place for the mausoleum. So I think we need to have a proletariat section too, and that's what I think we're looking at here.
These are just not proletarians. These are less well-to-do aristocrats.
Yes, right. Working class. Yeah.
All right, so I hereby propose that we set aside 2 plots, 20 by 20, in this section along Bedford Street, situated in a place that we are yet to be determined, but in that small area. As far as exactly where that will be, I think we should consult our engineers about where the driest spot is in there. Maybe something like that. How does that sound, Aaron?
I mean, if you want to, I can do that. I mean, if you want to give me the authority to lay something out, and I will provide you with a plan.
That sounds reasonable. Any thoughts on is that okay with everybody? We've got the general area, and within that area, we want 2 spots together, presumably together. And Aaron, yes, I'd like to ask if you would be willing to do that, to pick where they would be in there. To set aside at the prices we've determined, 20 by 20 feet. Do I hear a second? Is there someone willing to second that motion?
I second that.
Andrea Solomon seconds the motion. All right, let's take a vote. We'll go through the roll. Leo.
Aye.
Jerry.
Aye.
Brian.
Nay.
Andrea.
Aye.
Paul, aye. So it passes 4-1. Thank you very much. It is determined now. Aaron, thank you very much for doing that, setting a place. And now Brian and I are in the club of people who have been defeated 4-1.
Quite okay. It's quite okay. We're all entitled to the opinion. No problem.
All right. Okay, let's go on to D5. Bicycle use and signage. Continued discussion. Anyone want to say, no one's name is beside this, though this is an area that Brian has had some thoughts about. Brian, would you like to lead us off on this one?
Well, just, monitoring kind of what's going on in different committees. There hasn't been too much movement so far on, kind of bicycle rules of the road type of thing on the trails and whatnot. But, I just kind of looking at your notes, Paul, and which kind of reflects some of Leo's notes about, perhaps restricting people to paved areas. And to me, I think that's kind of a great idea, that there seems to be a lot of rules in other cemeteries that I've looked at that, restrict. I think I wouldn't maybe necessarily isolate bicycles. I think, for instance, if I'm a dog, I see dog walkers, you certainly don't want necessarily people walking their dogs across graves. So I think if we could maybe broaden it to a rule where we request visitors to stay on paved areas unless they're tending to a grave site. I think that would be, a good step. I don't think that's necessarily a rule that we have in place right now, although I could be wrong. It's been a while since I read the signs, but.
The signs say, among other things, pick up after your dog, treat these grounds with respect. That's what and then they say other things like decorations of graves will be removed after 2 weeks, something like that. Tish, what else do the signs say? There's 4 of them, I think.
I don't remember the exact wording, but it does say something about staying on the pavement with your car, at least.
Yeah.
So we have, and those are at the 4 entry gates, but there's nothing, as far as I know, at the back. Chestnut Circle, is that what it's called, Tish, at the very back there where the bridge is? Chestnut Hollow. There's nothing there, and that's where people do come in and out of the cemetery from the Reformatory Trail. So there's a place where there's no signage, as far as I know, dealing with. I think we've been over this, Brian. Remember, we had this is where I got defeated 4-1. The whole idea was that it's pretty hard to legislate things that you know it's going to be difficult to enforce. And so we just want to maybe make something as a reminder that when people come in, right there when they come in, and maybe a second sign way further up when they, right at Reformatory Trail, when they first come down, say, you are entering cemetery property. Please treat these grounds with respect. Funerals may be taking place, something like that. And that's the first. And then when they just are coming in, right after they come over the bridge, right into the cemetery proper, a second sign saying the same thing. That might be, without saying bicycles prohibited from this trail, which we probably can't enforce anyway, that might be a good start. Aaron.
Thank you. So there has been some, I would say, unofficial chatter between some departments and with some involved individuals on the trails. If I may, I'd like to share my screen again. So I received an email from Delia Kay, who is the Natural Resources Director and also the coordinator who deals with the trails and trail usage and trail guides. So what I have here on the right is the posted Reformatory Branch Trail Guide that we're all familiar with. We've reviewed it a number of times at previous committee meetings and discussed. And this is the proposed revision to said trail guide. And as you can see, they're proposing to remove a number of the unblazed trails to try to, I guess, keep people on the main blazed trails to try to, I think they've heard loud and clear the request from the cemetery committee, the discussions that everyone has had. And these are some, I think, very good changes that they are proposing to make. This was unsolicited. They sent this to me for input. And I'm sharing it to the committee for the committee's input as well. They are also proposing adding this little bit of narrative here. Sleepy Hollow Cemetery is an active burial ground. Please use trails quietly and respectfully. All dogs must be leashed. So they are going to include this on the trail map. This is still kind of under review and receiving comment, but that's their proposed revisions based on the discussions that the committee's had. So I just wanted to kind of make everyone aware of that. This falls directly in line with this line item. So I think it was fitting to share during these comments. And I agree. I think some signage, Paul and Brian, would be appropriate. And where I would recommend signage, we already have signage at the entrances to Sleepy Hollow from Bedford Street, but where I would recommend it is for right here off the trailhead, off the Reformatory Branch Trail, as folks are gonna, this is a pretty traffic trail. And I would recommend a sign facing the branch trail to inform visitors that similar to this, they're now entering cemetery grounds. And I would put a second sign again at this bridge, as folks, depending on catching anyone else who might have come from a different way into the cemetery, that they're again entering the cemetery grounds. So,
Aaron, is Moore Swamp is also cemetery ground?
This whole property is, I can bring up our GIS map if you give me 1 second here. So this parcel it's all cemetery grounds. So this whole parcel here, it's all cemetery property.
So it includes the whole swamp.
Correct. Correct. So this whole piece is all cemetery property, and that's pretty much this whole parcel right here. So
I think it's about 50 acres of the 96 acres of the property that we're looking at that's highlighted there. I think that highlighted is 96 acres, and then the unincorporated part, if you will, is about 50 acres. So it's quite a big piece of land, although, fairly wet.
Wow. Wow. So any thoughts on what Aaron just told us about where there's two signs there? Aaron, there's also the other entry further east on the Reformatory Branch Trail. There, almost, no, not the. There's the. I guess where that red one is. Yes.
Yeah, I think if we put the signage on the Reformatory Branch Trail, I mean, I can have a number of signs made. We have that in the budget to easily make signs.
Yeah.
So signs coming off of the trail and the entrances where the trails come into either behind the cemetery office.
Just gonna say that would be a good spot because they come through there all the time.
Yeah, I think that would be a beginning so that bicyclists will understand without any prohibition being voiced that they are now entering a special area where they are being asked to be mindful that it's the cemetery. That was very helpful, Aaron, to have that. So yes, I think it would be good to have signs. I don't know, there may be too many signs, but at least 4 where people are, where the cemetery, where Tish's office is, 2 up there on the Reformatory Branch as it enters in, and then 1 with the bridge right as you're coming in there. 4 signs that say something appropriate to remind bicyclists to watch their P's and Q's, so to speak. And I think they should be handsome signs, not, you know, along the same caliber as the ones we have in the, you know, the main gate, the 4 gates, which were not inexpensive. I don't remember what they cost. Do you, Andrea? This is when Andrea and I first came on, is when we bought those signs, and they were a gift, I think, to some extent. From the friends helped us with that, didn't they?
They did. I think they paid for all of them, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know. For some reason, I'm thinking they were about 500 a piece, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, at least 500 a piece, I think. Yeah. But I think, Aaron, we've got the dough, right?
I don't know if I have that much.
That's $2,000 we're looking at.
I will check.
All right.
I mean, I can make very nice, like, quality aluminum signs that are, you know, that have the vinyl graphic on the front that look very official and can match the same branding, if you will, of the cemetery and other public works type signs.
Well, you could do that, though, Aaron. We didn't use the whole 10 grand. We left 10,000 on the table there. We could spend 2 of that on really fancy schmancy signs. Who made them for us? Remember, Andrea, is it those nice folks down in West Concord?
It was Crosby was the last name.
Crosby.
Yeah.
I think they're in West Concord, isn't that right? Or are they in Acton? I can't remember.
I'm not sure where. I thought it was Concord, but I know that the friends have worked with him on other projects too.
Yeah.
Anyway, he does very nice signs.
Do you want to approach the friends for this one or no?
Yeah, I mean, it's worth trying. I don't know if they'd be as excited about it as other projects, but
one thing is that they would love to design it.
Yeah.
You know, they get involved. They get very picky and they put a lot of attention in there.
They do nice designs though. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
What do you
Yeah,
think?
it might be worth an ask.
Yeah. Tish, you got an opinion?
Nope.
Aaron?
I will do whatever the committee would like us to do.
Okay.
I would, as far as like $500 signs for this location, I don't know if that's, I don't know if I'd want to use that operating budget for that out of this fiscal year. I mean, if we want the signs up sooner rather than later, I can manufacture signs the same way we make other signs in town, with a town seal on them and make them look professional as a temporary, at a much less cost. If the committee's interested in doing so.
I'm kind of worried about vandalism out there,
Yeah.
You are?
honestly.
You
Yeah.
are? All right. Other thoughts? Aaron wants to be a little bit more cautious and start with something less fancy. And Tish is a little concerned that if we do something fancy, somebody might wreck it, which is possible. There's no one watching.
When we first put up the signs about dogs, people took them out.
Yeah.
years ago.
Mm.
They
Well,
took
they
them.
haven't been messing with our nice 4 ones that the friends gave us, thankfully. All right, well, okay, Aaron, you have make a good case in Tish too. I move that we ask Aaron to put together 4 of the kinds of signs he's talking about, but we still have to have text.
I will, if you'd like, I'll work on something. If you don't mind, I'll propose something to the committee to give me some time to draft something up, and I will distribute with a mock-up of what the sign will look like.
Sounds great. That sounds great. And then maybe we can post them sooner rather than later, and let everybody know that they're entering cemetery grounds when they bicycle in. I think that would be good. I propose that, would somebody else like to make a proposal to propose what we've just agreed to do?
And I don't know if we need to, I mean, we're just installing additional signage. I don't know, you can make a proposal if needed. I don't know if that requires a proposal.
All right. Okay, we'll let it go, Aaron. Go ahead and design it for us. Let us see what you got, and then we'll vote on that. How about that?
You're done. Absolutely.
All right. Now, thank you, everyone. Committee comments. Last chance to say something in the month of January to the cemetery committee. Public comments. Susan, go ahead.
I just have a question. When I reported out to the select board about the mausoleums, someone asked me how many interments can be in a mausoleum, and I said I thought it was 6, but I want to tell the truth here. So, what's the answer to that question?
Depends on the size of the mausoleum and whether or not it's for full interment or cremation.
Okay, if it was full interment.
Typically 4 or 6.
Okay. All right, good. That's a good guideline.
For the size that we're doing, I mean, yeah, 4 or 6.
Okay.
You know, Susan, next time you're in the Sleepy Hollow, you see the Pope too.
Yeah.
There's a little window in the front. You can look in the window and you can see on both sides. I think there are 4 in there. Tish, is that right? Yeah, and 4 looks pretty comfy, so to speak.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you all. This is one of my favorite meetings. I love how much care and thought that the whole committee, along with Aaron and now Justine, put into, and Tish, the care of this precious resource. So thanks.
Thank you for that encouraging word, Susan. It's great to have you join us. All right, so let me go over the summary of the follow-up items here. Let's go working backwards. Aaron's going to design, give us a design and some text for 4 signs to do with being careful about bicyclists coming into the cemetery. Aaron's also we're budgeting $10,000 for work on pointing, repointing, fixing stone walls. And Aaron and Leo are going to work on a sort of a priority list of which stone walls need what and how much, priority, which ones they want to prioritize. And we will consider, or Aaron's going to work on, come this summer, something to present to the Concord Preservation Act people for a much bigger ask to work on the stone walls come 2023. So let's see, 2023 stone walls. And we've also appropriated $10,000 toward a design plan, should we come to that, for the Columbarium with Andrea and Jerry. And Aaron is going to send out the thank you letter to the friends and to an appreciation letter to Mallory. And I want to ask all of you again, if you have any ideas about what I should include in the 2020 summary for the annual report, please send me an email. Have I left anything out of the recaps, things to do that we decided?
publication of the mausoleum's availability and.
Oh, yes, right. Right. And Aaron's going to send me, how do I reach the publication officer about mausoleum availability? Thank you very much, Brian. And I will send Aaron the text of the history of the cemetery committee for the website. I think I got it all. Anything I'm forgetting? Well, I wish you all a good January. Stay safe. Hopefully you'll get a vaccine before too long. And God bless you. Do I have a motion to close?
I motion to close.
Andrea Solomon moves we close. Do I have a second?
Second.
Brian Davis, I know you'd like to stay in session for a few more hours, but I don't think so. Brian moves that we adjourn, seconds it. All in favor, let's go around. Okay, Paul, yes, I agree. Brian?
Aye.
Andrea?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Leo?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We are adjourned. Justine, thanks for being with us. Thank you for being with us, Susan. Bye, Aaron. Bye, Tish.
Aye.